Hey,
Yes.
how you guys doing? I wanted to bring us in today. We were kind of exploring a bit different topics, and we came across one, right? And we were thinking about transitions and what a time for transitions, right? Like, I mean, at any moment throughout the year, there's always a transition happen, whether it be logistic, emotional, mental, physical. There's always these ages of transitions, and there's a concept that comes to mind, and I wanted to just kind of pitch it to you and see where we can kind of take this ride on the carriage. So transitions is a change, right? And transitions mean that there's a beginning and that there's an end. And oftentimes people believe, and I've noticed this, at least in my practice too, that that there's this end before the beginning, and the end has such a heavy weight to it, like a price. And it makes me think that an ending is not an ending; it's the price that you pay for admissions to the new beginning. So an ending is the price that you pay for something new to begin, that new chapter to unfold. And I wanted to just kind of take that with us and see where we can take it. What comes to mind?
I'm hearing her, right? And so no new chapter begins obviously without something else ending. So, you know, transitions ultimately involve a loss of some kind, right? There is a loss. I mean, an ending is a loss, whether it's an intentional and chosen loss, right? Or whether it's just something we find ourselves in the midst of.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I think that that is the price to pay is to actually go all the way through the end of something in order for the new to begin. It makes me think about um, sort of like if we're going to grow something from the ground, so we have to decay it. It makes me think about decay and sort of how that change and that ending creates the soil, the sort of uh, the compost for the new beginning. Like we had to sort of go all the way down and break it all the way down for that new thing to begin to grow within a very fertile ground.
But is that like a law? Is it one of these fundamental necessities in life? Like, do we have to like does the chapter have to end for the new one to begin? Right? Like you're saying, like it serves as the compost for the new browns, right? Is that always the case? And why do you notice that what do you notice that people have such a hard time with?
It's an in between state, right? I mean, this is like kind of liminalities that we're talking about. It's that in between. And why do we struggle so much with that in between, right? Is it the loss of what's familiar and predictable? Because even though new beginnings can be beautiful, right? They can be chosen events, whether you're getting married or having a baby or, all these things we think of as positive events. Yet there is a loss of something. There's a loss of an old life that you've had, an identity, right? That we're grappling with. So, I mean, I don't think we have to frame loss as negative per se, but I think that yes, it is integral when we're talking about new chapters, like what is ending. But one thing I'm hearing you say that really is important also is that I do feel like we live in a culture where we're kind of pressured to be positive about these transitions, right? And it's
Just get
seductive.
over it. Yeah,
Or
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Get on with it.
everything has a purpose. And I get it. These are all well-intentioned things, right? Like, sure, it may be purposeful and yeah, you've got this and new things await, but is it actually recognizing and validating that something also has been lost, that it really may need to be fully immersed in?
Right, just some fully metabolized, fully
Right.
digested and metabolized. But I understand what you're saying, and I think the question is around whether we consciously, because I do think we have to end something before we begin, but we might not consciously go along with that process. We might not consciously allow ourselves to fully digest the ending of something and allow for the beginning. And so that's where I think maybe some of our some where we struggle is it's sort of making the conscious relationship with the fact that there's loss and change in an any beginning. But that because I think about it's going to happen anyway. Change is going to happen, whether you are consciously sort of part of that process or whether that's just happening to you. And then there's a sort of an accumulation of multiple, perhaps muscles that we haven't digested fully, and then that catches up with us and can sort of create like a roadblock in our kind of psyches, and perhaps then we're going to have really a big like a depression to be able to metabolize that and make sense. It's storage of stuff, but we have it'll consciously be in relationship.
It feels like forced growth as opposed to like, post-traumatic growth that we kind of talk about, which really is being able to kind of navigate the struggle to come away with something different, something new versus, okay, I've got this, right?
Yeah. It gives you an opportunity to, what I'm hearing is it gives you an opportunity to grieve, right? But the secondary losses that come with that change. Yeah. Like the thing happens, whatever it may be, whether it be a change in your job, whether it be a change in your life. I mean, we hear all the time life transitions, right? Someone baby is born, someone passes, right? Big changes. And how do we adjust to these things? And is it always so positive? And can we be okay with it being, with it being a little negative, right? Can it be, like you said, like, can we grieve that process for a moment, give it its space? And then in giving it that space, there is something born from it. And I think we're all agreeing to this. What's born from that? What's born from giving it its due diligence of grief and space to process, to cry, to express, and not to live in that space, but to what?
To validate it, to recognize it, to honor it, allow it.
Allow, just give it space and not judge it. Again, we're coming back to this place of learning how to sit with feelings, learning how to sit with difficult feelings, how to tolerate, how to give ourselves that the space to be with something that might be dying or changing. And I wanted to say something else is that, it's not only the big changes, but the only thing we know for sure about life is that things are going to change.
Whether you like it or not.
It's constant change. I mean, this a second before this, things have changed completely.
So nothing lasts forever. Things fall apart, right? For better, for worse. But I'm reminded how in many cultures, like transitions they're honored and they're marked with ritual. If you think about, just like even the changes from childhood to adolescence in many cultures. I mean, this is a hefty transition, but it's marked with ritual, right? There are phases of transition that cultures often recognize. You have the bar mitzvah, the bat mitzvah. So there are many ways that we honor this. And it's interesting that the transitions around youth, there's sort of rituals for those transitions. But what about some of the transitions like old age or going into menopause for women or, aging? So a lot of those things are in the shadow in our society. It's not, we don't have ritual and opportunity. It's kind of like people become hidden in Western culture when we're going through some of those life changes.
Could you give a little bit more about in the shadow of society? What do you mean by that?
The experience of aging is not seen as productive. Our society focuses a lot on productivity, and so transitions that are around, coming into that sort of productive phase of your life are given value. But as you start to age, I mean, I'm just going to talk about aging as a specific experience of transition that is put into the shadow. It's hidden away. People feel ashamed. They feel less valued. They feel like they have no value in society anymore. And so that transition goes into the shadow. It becomes hidden. We become older people hide away.
I think it plays very deeply into transitions, right? Like when you say the word shadow, immediately we think of, like the Jungian shadow, right? It's like this concept that it lurks in the backgrounds. It's not so present in the conscious awareness, but yet it kind of controls a lot of conscious action by avoiding the things that it represents. So we don't necessarily do things because of it, but we do things as a result to avoid the thing that we don't want to see. So it's almost like an antimatter effect on us. It's not touching us, but it's repelling us. Uh, and talking about transitions, talking about, being able to hold space for these transitions, right? Having like a ritual for it. And then suddenly we're realizing that old age, for instance, like it is something that is in the shadows of, at least in Western society, right? I think of Billy Joel and his song Vienna, where the story behind it was, he there was there was distance between him and his father, and then he finally went to Vienna and he met his father there, and he saw an old woman walking down the street with his father, who saw an old woman sweeping, and he goes, look at this old woman, right? She's reached like the end, I'm like, and the father said, no, like she's still here, she's contributing to the society. And the whole idea behind the song Vienna is, Vienna waits for you, old age waits for you. And in Vienna, there is no, at least from my understanding, I've never been to Vienna myself yet, but one day. Um, the idea is, there is no worthlessness, right? Everybody is a useful instrument in the society. Culturally, in Latinos, the the matriarchs, right? The patriarchs, like the older individuals, are the ones who caretake the children in a lot of ways, right? They provide that assistance. So how can we take it out of the shadow? How can we put a light on it so that we can maybe start creating something that's a little more synergistic to help with these transitions, right? We're all getting older and we always have transitions happen. How can we create almost like a richer something that we can do to change the perspective, give it some more purpose in it?
You're asking how do we actually change cultural perceptions and attitudes towards something like death, towards aging, towards fear of our own mortality.
All the time. Cultural changes happen.
Yeah, sure. No, they do, of course. But every change starts first and foremost within us, right? So, where does that shift lie within us? Where does our own shadow lurk? Where does our own shadow fear getting old, feeling unproductive, our own mortality? And how do we hide from that? And how do we avoid actually looking at that?
Yeah, I've been very curious lately around this sort of kind of pro-age movement because there's like this huge sort of emphasis on continuing to keep aging in the shadow, like all those anti-age movements. These are products to me contribute to that feeling of worthlessness. Like I shouldn't embrace this transition into aging. I should really resist it and repress it and keep it in the shadow. And now I'm starting to see a little bit online, it's with the sort of pro-age idea, or or what may happen with that, and something that I've found quite helpful, and something I've been actually talking with some of my clients about too, is having a different perspective because when we age, so I like this idea. So Rudolf Steiner has this idea around development that development is a kind of a U shape. So when we begin, we come down, and then he has a very spiritual perspective on things. So when we come down from Evan or from the spiritual plane, as children, we're very, very close, up on the top of the U. And we move down the U, the bottom of the U is kind of like teenagehood or adolescence. We're as far away from kind of we call it in the lower realms in our adolescence. But then as we sort of age and we grow towards old age, we go up the other side of the U. And so, something I've been talking to some of my clients about is, and I think it is around identity. It's like, what do we identify? Uh, where is our identity? Because at some point, we do have to relinquish our connection to our younger, our younger ourselves, our ego self. We have to sort of surrender to some another process that's going on. That maybe we become, maybe it's just our accumulated wisdom that we start to identify with as having a value. Or maybe it's we deepen in our spiritual practices and we're not so attached to the physical body as we kind of age. Because I think that the attachment to youth and productivity and ego really has a lot to do with our physical bodies. And as our physical bodies start to change, we have to find something else. Um, to identify with, something else to find meaning.
We have to, like, repurpose our purpose,
Yeah,
you know?
Cool. I like that.
I like that.
Yeah. Repurpose our purpose.
We have to start finding value maybe in parts of ourselves that we never thought about before,
Right.
or contribute in ways that we've never done before. I mean, things do shift,
Yeah.
right?
And I think, kind of to the point of it's, society highlights a lot of the things that are contrary to like the natural development of things, right? Like, oh, stay young forever. It's like, I'm sorry, Nosferatu, Dracula, like not even these dudes can stay young forever, right? Like, it
It's exhausting. There's just, I mean, you're chasing your own tail constantly, and you're never actually okay. How can your nervous system ever be at peace when you are constantly reaching for something that you will never attain?
Unattainable.
when you're constantly being told the natural progression of everything that's happening right now,
It's not a
wrong,
It's wrong. Yeah, it's
right? And it's go ahead, go.
no, I was going to say that actually the antidote to all of this is really about acceptance of our natural process. It's sort of which is accessible to us. There's a lot. We get a lot of input from the collective conscious that tells us, about but the surrender to the actual natural process,
which is
based on-
different than complacency. A lot of people think acceptance means just resigning yourself. Like, oh, you know what? I'm feeling tired. I'm old today. I'm not getting out on the courts. I'm not gonna. But you know what I mean? And I do feel like that's dangerous. Like we have to help distinguish what, resigning to something is versus like, accepting, but accepting with grace and trying to figure out what are my strengths now at this point in time. Where does my value lie now? What new things are ahead of me to learn?
So, thinking about transitions and like, I know we're talking about aging and like the natural progression of things. One thing that comes to mind is, I've worked a lot with addiction, and transitioning from addiction to recovery is one of the, it's one of the hardest things that a human being can do. Like, if anybody's been through the world of addiction, then like they know it's very difficult. And kind of to what you're saying, repurposing your purpose and like tapping into these parts that maybe I didn't give so much credence to, right? And really seeing things from a different lens because, and it goes to what you're saying, like you with the anti-aging creams and everything like that. Society, at least in the West, right? It caters to this idea of addiction, right? It's very profitable, right? Hey, what do you guys want to do tonight? Let's go to the bar, right? Let's go out to the clubs. Let's go out, especially in the world of South Florida, let's go out and do these things. And it's like, well, okay. But what about let's get together, let's have a good time, let's hang out. Let's go get some dinner, right? Let's go to a park. Let's all hang out. Let's go play a game. Let's go do something different that still connects and it still fosters these other qualities and traits that are inside of us, like human contact, connection. Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind in this kind of these new beginnings too, I think it's a myth to think about new beginnings as like this clean slate, right? Because I think there's always something residual that gets carried over into new beginnings. So the question is, anything that has become maybe buried, repressed, unprocessed, like how much of a new beginning can we talk about? Is that new beginning somewhat of an illusion if we haven't fully digested, like you said, what we're leaving behind? Um, so I don't know. It's just kind of just a thought that I was thinking about.
Just delete the past.
What? Yeah.
You learned from it and lived it. It was there, you know. People that go into their, into the older years, right? The later years, they look back in their past and it's like, oh man, the things that I did or the person that I was. And it's like, well, hold on a second. Yes, those things were there. And yes, that was a part of you and that was a version of you, but it doesn't just go away. And then it's making peace with that. People get clean. People get sober. The things that I did, moral injuries that were born from the things that I did under the influence.
But addiction's a good example of this residual thing too, because I do think that one of the problems in the recovery movement sometimes is that the 12 steps are great in the sense that they ask people to look at themselves honestly and make amends and understand what they're in control of and where their limitations are. But I also think if they're not doing the deeper work, like the psychological work, then they run that risk of repeating those old patterns and behaviors again, right? So you can be clean and sober for 10 years, but it's sort of like you're just like a clean addict. Does that make sense?
Well,
Like it's
there's something called the dry drop,
dry dry.
and that
Yes.
oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you're abstaining from the substances or whatever, substance or behavior, right? And Arda Bamate talks about his addiction to collecting records and stuff like that. Gets up to like the thousands of dollars, right? It's a material addiction. Um, eh, but if you don't address, like you're saying, like the deeper rooted stuff, if you don't look at the shadow, if you don't open that black box, then you're gonna have a hard time, and there's a high chance of relapse, right? I tell my clients all the time, especially the ones that are like in recovery, that are stepping into the world of recovery, or that have been in it for 6, 7, 8 years, right? You gotta be able to look into that box, and you have to be able to look at it and take a moment. And sometimes we don't have to find an answer for it. Sometimes you just have to acknowledge it, because in the face of this transition, there is no distraction. And how comfortable can we learn to be? And we can be comfortable with it, sitting with it and looking at the face of our shadows and acknowledging that it is a part of us, does not make us a bad person. And how can we repurpose our purpose? How can we repurpose that? Give value.
Going back to your point about sort of getting to the text, like going kind of deeper into that. And I wonder how helpful it is to really kind of delve into the kind of tap roots that really begins that behavior. Because I know that I understand that question or that thought, I'm a bad person because I did all these things. And if we really kind of look deeper into where did that come from? What is the impulse in the beginning that started off that search or that seeking for something more? Or I just think there's so much potential to really look deeper into these sort of unresolved things and not stop at a self-judgment and start and try to change our behavior based on, oh, this is bad, so I now want to be good. Because
Keeps us locked into like a victim mindset, which we know is, that's just a powerless place to reside. And I, and I'm not saying that there are very real victims, right? In this world of addiction. We know this. You know this, right? But I think the danger is in when we identify with being a victim. So too much. You know what I mean? Because I think once that becomes part of how we define who we are, then what possibilities are there?
If for some, it becomes like a secondary gain.
Right.
Well, I can't because I am a victim.
Right.
I can't because I am this, right? And that's where it comes in. Like, it's have to be very forthcoming. You have to look at yourself in a very raw, vulnerable way to really understand and acknowledge these kinds of things.
yeah, and that the deepening of self-compassion, like holding space for self-compassion. And I don't mean a rescuing position. Like I don't, because we can get into a victim and a rescuer and a perpetrator inside of ourselves. We have that sort of dispatch system within ourselves. But to be able to hold that possibility of curiosity and compassion in ourselves, to try to dig deeper, to understand what the roots of our decay, the roots of our issues are, as we're sort of going through a transition, as you say, to kind of really get to the bottom of it so that you can go all the way through those feelings so that you can begin.
I've got a cousin of mine. He's a philomath. He's brilliant, brilliant guy. Spends nights just reading. Like, he's just one of these guys that absorbs information at a ridiculous rate. Always sends me emails with like studies and findings and psychology. And he's not even a psychologist. He just finds it all fascinating. And he explained to me that there are two qualities to have when you're learning something, and that's curiosity and awe. You ask a question, and then you find the awe in it, and then you get curious about it again. And it's this infinite loop, is what he describes it as. if we can ascribe the same curiosity and awe without that kind of self-criticizing judgment, right, to our own shadows, to our own self, that's, I feel, eh, I believe it to being such a powerful catalyst to giving meaning to things like transitions, right? To be able to, in that transition, as the death of one end or as the ending of one end serves as the grist for the mill, the fodder for the new chapter, it allows for this deeper repurpose to kind of put everything, put together a bit, right? And it works. It does. And I mean, we struggle with these things day to day. Because here we can talk about it in the carriage, and it's great
It's a
because
human struggle. We don't get to escape this. This is just part of what it means to be human.
Perhaps. Yeah, and I think about it from a developmental point of view too, thinking about a transition object or kind of the transition from, if some or a baby get weaning off a mother and just all those transitions are so hard. Like you see a baby, the crying, the protest, pain that we have to go through to be able to like let go of our past in order to move into the next stage. It's real. It's real. Very real struggles, and a lot of the time we don't allow ourselves. When you're a baby, it's natural to cry when your mom leaves the room,
Yeah.
or when your little bunny goes missing. Uh, but these things that we have those same feelings within us as we grow up, and as every transition we have is we need to process the feelings that they give ourselves permission.
But the messaging is often around trying to take away the discomfort. Again, you've got this. You're strong. There's purpose here, right? And I get it. Again, well intentioned. But the difficulty is just sitting in the chaos, sitting in the mess.
going in
The between
just like the ending of one chapter serves as fodder for the next chapter. The struggle that you experience sitting in the mess serves as the fodder for the growth that you get from it. It's the same pattern repeating itself. It's just a different way. It's transition. And no matter how you slice it, it's effervescent. It's like always my way. No, not effervescent. Ubiquitous. There you go. Effervescent is what happens when you put little thing in your bubbles.
disappears after that.
Kind of like a problem. So, I wonder, what is it that we can, if there's anything that we can try to convey. I mean, we've talked a lot about transitions today, right? And we've explored different episodes of it. If there's something that we can convey to our viewers, right? Something that like a takeaway that they can incorporate in their day, even now, right? Just to find something to to repurpose their purpose, to give their transition something a little bit more neat. Even asking, like I would ask, what is it that you're willing to, what is the price that you're willing to pay for the new chapter that you want to unfade? Right? What are you willing to do in order to begin that chapter? And what does it mean for you? So, what would you guys offer?
I always go back to ritual a little bit. And so one of the things I sometimes do with my clients when they're in the midst of trying to navigate something new and unknown and uncertain is to write a letter to their former self.
Nice, love it. Love a letter to your formal self. What?
It acknowledges the existence of that self. It validates that self. There is a compassion that often comes through when people are asked to sit down and put a paper and pen to, and kind of look in themselves honestly. So I don't know. I have found that helpful when you can sit down and actually do something simple like that.
Just write to yourself.
Just write a letter to your former self.
Love
Yeah. Yeah, I think just giving yourself permission to allow yourself to go through the experience of loss. And I'm thinking about this sort of attitude, like we can fight through it, we can kick and scream through it, or we can, as you always say, suffer more grace. We can give ourselves that that grace to know that this is part of it's part of being human, and we all go through it. So just kind of being aware of your attitude and sinking more into the real experience of transition and not fight it. Yeah.